We are live. Welcome to Ballbusters. Radio check out there. Lost one, this is lost 3, or you lost 2, over?
Hello, we can hear you. Are we finally live?
We are live.
Excellent. Welcome to Ballbusters Live. I'm your rather terrible Master of Ceremonies, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this, the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with all the Quantum Eraser goodness. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Patreon and PayPal link in the info box below the video. Now today, this will be the part 4 of 4 Master of Science presentations, and we are joined by Dr. John D. How are you doing, Dr. John? Can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you very much. Yep. Oh, yes. Yeah, all good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
It's been a superb presentation. So if you aren't up to date with this particular presentation, obviously go to the playlist for Master of Science, which is in Quantum Eraser's playlists, and check out the first 3 as they've all been epic. But obviously this will be the concluding part to this presentation, and stay tuned. It's going to be absolutely marvelous, as were all 3 of the others. But we're going to sum up some of the points that have been discussed. Quantum Eraser, more likely, will be summing up some of the points, and there will be some interaction from the live audience. So if you do want to join this presentation, there will be various points where we ask for opinions or any challenge to what's been presented from the live audience in the Quantum Eraser YouTube live stream. So if you do want to join, there is a link below this video in the info box. So just click on that link and it will take you to the Ballbusters live stream, where you will, as I say, remain on mute until the appropriate time when we will ask for opinions. So feel free to join the show if you do want to express your views.
Yes, the presentations will be under the playlist of Science Education, and they're going to be populating. It'll be a quite large file here over the next 3 months. So they'll all be in there for you.
It's Dr. John's first time on Ballbusters.
It is. Welcome, Dr. John.
Hi there, thanks. Yeah, I feel like a bit of a Ballbusters virgin.
Yeah.
Plus, I've got my family in the background, like making lots of noise, so I will be on mute most of the time.
Yeah, that's okay. No problem. We're used to it, man. No worries. Welcome to Ballbusters.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
We'll fit right in, I'm certain.
Yeah, just keep your mic open, off mute. You're good to go, man.
Yeah, just interrupt at every given opportunity, and everything will be just like it always is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it will be. And like I told you before, Nathan, I loved your cameo on Taboo Conspiracy. For anybody out there, if you're not subscribed to Taboo Conspiracy, you need to get that way. Also, another one is Dave Rakia, his channel. I'll tell you what, he's got some really good moon visuals for you, and some of the sun. So I've been on there a couple times over the past few weeks, and they're quite breathtaking. So rock on, Dave Rakia.
I have to get a link for him, and I'll post it in your live stream so people can go and subscribe today. I'll do that. There's only the 3 of us here at the moment, so I don't know. Do you want to kick straight off with the presentation? Enough foreplay or not?
Yeah, I think it's enough foreplay. This presentation will be a little bit shorter than the other presentations. I went through it yesterday, and no big deal with that. Like I said, it's just a tiny bit shorter. but not lacking substance. So, and I've already presented on natural experiments, observational studies, and field studies. Over the past month, I've pulled this out a couple times, but no worries. There's no problems. It's good to go over and over and over these topics so they stick with you. So, whenever you're ready, sir, I guess we could do it. No problem.
I'm good. I'm ready whenever you are.
All right. Like I said, natural experiments, observational studies, and field studies. See what happened after 3.5 years of flat earthers repeating experiment, experiment, experiment. These knuckle draggers finally got the idea that they probably ought to Google the term experiment, right? Try to figure out what the heck we're talking about. This is a belly laugher, folks. So what they come across is natural experiments. And you see, they only just parrot this thing. Yeah, natural experiments, we got it. Read down a little bit, see what a natural experiment is, and just parrot that. You shouldn't have done that. Either that or observational studies or field studies. So, you know what we're going to do. When you bring up terms or a phrase, we're going to define it. So, from natural experiments from their alma mater wiki. Natural experiments are a different type of quasi-experiment design used by researchers. It differs from person-by-person treatment in a way that there is not a variable that is being manipulated by the experimenter. Now, two big problems arise. First, the word quasi in front of experiment should raise a weathered eye, right? If that doesn't do it, and if you've been keeping up to date with the flat earth debate for any amount of time, this second part of the definition is not a variable that is being manipulated, should be a full eyebrow raise and a belly laugher, because this experiment, natural experiments, all of them, have no independent variable. Ergo, that's why they call it quasi, right? And you jumped on me, didn't you? Quasi. That's why they put that little word in there. So what does quasi mean? Well, from Oxford Dictionaries, quasi, seemingly, apparently, but not really. Synonyms for quasi from Merriam-Webster and Thesaurus. Pseudo, not real, genuine, sham, spurious. I don't know what to say to you guys. I don't know how you're going to spin this. We were ready for the spin zone with that one. This settles it. From Craig et al. Using natural experiments to evaluate population health interventions. That's key, right? From the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. Let's take a listen. The term natural experiment lacks an exact definition. What? All things in actual science have precise definitions, right? We're not into lacks an exact definition. You just pummeled it yourself right in the head, right from Jump Street. And many variants are found in the literature. The common thread in most definitions is that exposure to the event or intervention of interest has not been manipulated by the researcher. Read, no viable independent variable. That equals no experiment. It's just that simple. There are important areas of public health policy, such as suicide prevention, air pollution control, public smoking bans, and alcohol taxation, where natural experimental studies have already contributed a convincing body of evidence. Really? So, is suicide prevention, air pollution control, public smoking bans, and alcohol taxation friggin' physics, chemistry, biochemistry, or biology? Hey? I don't think so. This is a joke, folks, this natural experiments. And we're still waiting for the birds humping natural experiments from Gem Panda. Just to let you know we haven't forgot. Next on the docket, Observational studies. Observational studies are not scientific experiments. From Hinkelmann et al., Design and Analysis of Experiments, Volume 1, Introduction to Experimental Design. The first sentence. Observational studies are not experiments. So, I don't know, folks. I'm just going to stop right there, right? Do we need to go any further? I will. Just with the second sentence. By definition, observational studies lack the manipulation required for Baconian experiments. So, just like its twisted sister, natural experiments, these also lack the manipulation required for Baconian experiment. Lack the manipulation of what? Well, yeah, the independent variable. They have no cause for their effect. These are not experiments. Period. End of story. And our last, door number 3, train wreck. Field studies are not scientific experiments. From their alma mater wiki again. However, like natural experiments, field experiments suffer from the possibility of contamination. Experimental conditions can be controlled with more precision and certainty in the lab. Yet some phenomena, for example, voter turnout in an election, cannot be easily studied in a laboratory. So voter turnout is physics? Calling somebody a moron is a colossal understatement if you ever thought that field studies were scientific experiments. By the way, you'd fail 5th grade general science. Thanks. Regards. Let's stop right there with these 3 bozos. Comments, questions?
It's only reasonable that Dr. John gets the floor, as it's his first time here.
Thanks, Nathan. No, it sounds fair to me. Where's the cause and where's the effect? Like, I'm really confused here. They don't seem to be testing that.
Yeah, there are no tests here. Yeah.
So part of me is kind of saying in my head, so what's the point?
Well, there is no point. Most of these have to do, the big ones are natural experiments and observational studies. They have to do with epidemiology, right? They're not giving you cause and effect at best. At the very best. All they're going to give you is correlation. That's it. But the reason why, like I said, after 3.5 years of stating experiment, and holding their toes to the fire, because they don't have a clue, right? Other than science buddies. They just typed it. They finally got a clue and typed it into Google, right? Experiments. I'm going to catch these guys. I know they're frauds. Yeah, natural experiments. That's what we got. Yeah. Just stamp on the forehead. They're clueless. They have no idea what they're doing, no idea what they're talking about. This is a joke brought to you by clinical level Dunning-Kruger pretender clown Muppets. Over.
They, for anybody who's interested, are the people we are in opposition to, i.e. the globe heads, who essentially are rebutting the fact that we ask for scientific validity to their assertions and then make it quite plain what science actually is. But yet we get words like quasi in their rebuttals and pseudo in their worldview. Amazing how surface deep their actual claims of science are. Or in this case are not, because they're definitely not science. Quasi this and pseudo that. Yeah, definitely not science. Move on.
Yeah, I don't think we need this. Go ahead.
More for any more, John?
No, all good.
Let's move on.
Let's see what we got. 1 second, sir.
Hello.
All right. This is one topic. It's going to not only raise some eyebrows, but are going to get panties in a bunch. Because this subject right here, natural laws versus scientific theories, right? So what the secular society does, and these physics pseudoscience priest is, they preach about the laws of physics, right? Physics is science. Are natural laws science? That's rhetorical, by the way. Let's see. Let's do a couple compares and contrasts first. Let's see what we got. So we got scientific theories. These explain the how and the why, the mechanisms and process, and identifies the cause. For example, germ theory. Scientific theories are the result of validated, confirmed scientific hypotheses that have been rigorously tested, as opposed to natural laws, which go by the phrase scientific laws or the laws of physics, but they're quite erroneous. Natural laws describe the whats and the ises. The cause is not applicable. They are based solely on observations, often expressed mathematically. For example, the second law of thermodynamics. With natural laws, like I said above, the cause and the how and the why mechanism are both nonsensical and invalid inquiries. It's just an is and an are. For example, how or why does heat flow from hot to cold always? We don't know, and we'll never know. All we know every single time, it just does and is. Ergo, natural law. That's why they're called the laws of thermodynamics and not the theories of thermodynamics. Are you following? Natural laws never become scientific theories or vice versa. Each are domain-specific inherently. What should be your next objection? Challenge your inquiry. Well, what makes the laws of physics scientific then, QE? Right? What does? Natural laws, i.e. the erroneous laws of physics, are not scientific. Why? Because physics is science, and natural laws are not scientific. It's just that simple. Natural laws are merely descriptions, like I said, often expressed mathematically, of plain old observations of nature. The scientific method, however, is employed to elucidate and explain cause and effect, the hows and the whys, not describe the whats and the ises. That's not its mission. Scientific theories don't describe. Natural laws only breach the first step of the scientific method. Observe a phenomenon. You can't formulate a scientific hypothesis, step 3 in the scientific method, because a viable cause or independent variable doesn't exist. It's forever illusory. From Max Tegmark, Professor MIT. Listen closely. We humans have gradually discovered many additional recurring shapes and patterns in nature, involving not only motion and gravity, but also areas as disparate as electricity, magnetism, light, heat, chemistry, radioactivity, and subatomic particles. These patterns are summarized by what we call our laws of physics. In the same article, Professor Max, when we look at reality through the equations of physics, we find that they describe patterns and regularities. So you're looking at reality through equations? How in the world can you look at reality when equations are not reality? Somebody answer that for me, please. It's rhetorical. What a train wreck statement that is, Max. And the second part, we find that they describe patterns and regularities. Therefore, the laws of physics are mathematical descriptions of mere observations, the laws of nature. But wait a second. My son is a video game master champion. He can readily recognize and describe the recurring patterns and regularities present in the game, all the while being absolutely clueless about the underlying architecture, that is, the software of the game. But he intuitively knows that the patterns and regularities in the game are not the cause of the game. And is my 13-year-old right now, a scientist? Number 2, how can the laws of physics, descriptions of patterns and regularities in nature via equations, have anything whatsoever to do with the scientific method, science, when the scientific method is solely based on hypothesis testing, which is only employed to explain what? Cause and effect relationships, the hows and the whys. Describing focuses solely on the whats and the ises. Explanations, on the other hand, focus solely on the hows and the whys. There's kind of a big difference between describing something and explaining cause and effect. Like actual hypothesis testing, experiments. Watching heat flow from hot to cold, or gases flow from high pressure to low pressure, that's the second law of thermodynamics, both equations, by the way, isn't an experiment. It's merely observing a phenomenon. Have the laws of motion ever caused a single billiard ball to move across the table? The story begins and ends at the first step of the scientific method with natural laws. Is that science? Nope. But the savior, we can predict. So, after observing heat flow from hot to cold a few billion times, second law of thermodynamics, without fail, you scientifically predict, genuflect, that if I set my scalding hot cup of coffee on the table for 20 minutes, it's gonna get cooler? Wow, a seer! Thanks, Captain Obvious. You must be a scientist. A complete moron at the beginning of time could have reached the same conclusion in a coma. Basket weaving is more scientific than scientific laws. That's a misnomer. They're natural laws. They just throw the term scientific in front of the word law by mere fiat without any warrant whatsoever. It's like a turkey squirrel scenario. Well, there's a squirrel. Well, I'll just throw turkey in front of it. What's a turkey? Then what did they do? Well, since heat flows from hot to cold always, describe it using equations, then pronounce from the rooftops, this is scientific law. That is science, genuflect. This is second grade slick. It greases the skids for their propaganda efforts with Joe Coffey and Betty Breadmaker, the masses of the scientific illiterate public, to now put the term scientific in front of just about anything for veracity and validation. Here's the brain dead examples: evolution, big bangs, multiverses, black holes, gravy waves, dark matter, spinning balls, ether. See the game? Do you see it? In conclusion, file 13, the term scientific with law is a belly laugher. It's incoherent. It doesn't fit. It's out of context. What are they? Simply natural laws. Comments, questions?
No, that makes sense. Seems like logical to me.
See, Mayor, I've got a great deal to add. I did like your, I don't know if that's a new addition with your comparison to recognizing patterns in a video game. I really like that. I'm going to formulate that into an affirming the consequent as a comparison. Because obviously, if you can remove it from the paradigm people are brainwashed with, i.e., instead of using a hemispherical example when you affirm the consequent, you use a computer game example with a different pattern and an affirming the consequent to highlight the fact that it's a fallacy. I mean, I'm sidetracking slightly away from the fact that this whole process is devoid of any scientific validity, which is your point. So I should try and get back onto that track. Correct. So much nonsense, so much that would express correlation, but yet get held up, or pattern watching that gets held up in science. Yeah, it's a joke.
They're serious.
John,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
why do people? It seems that people, like, have a problem with this, but I can't see where the problem is.
It's called ignorance.
Right,
Even actual scientists don't know the difference between laws. They call them scientific laws. You've heard the laws of physics. How many times have you heard that phrase? Laws of physics.
Yes, lots of times. Yes.
Okay, natural laws are not scientific, but physics is science. So how you can't put those two together? You just can't. It's like I said, it's a turkey squirrel scenario. It's as simple as that. I'm shocked at it's a self-evident contradiction in terms. It's like military intelligence or achromatic rainbows. It's that belly laugher. I don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, agreed. When we get, like, taught at school, it's, it's a bit mixed. Yeah, but now but now you have, like, presented this, it's surely really clear and highly logical.
I was about to say exactly that. When you get taught it, it's mixed, you said. Well, yeah, exactly. So when we've got pseudoscience and just so stories mixed in with actual cause and effect reasoning and natural law, you end up with a convoluted idea of what science is. Well, that's easy to take advantage of if you're one of the people who are putting out a pseudoscience claim rather than an applied science that's been or gone through the scientific method, or just declaring accurately and concisely something that just happens in nature. So those three things get all bundled together for presumably the advantage of the pseudoscience, because there's no benefit to somebody who's establishing cause and effect and then presenting their findings for them to be validated by other people in the same manner. Well, they're not interested in a just so storyteller who's utilizing the fact that there's a nice segue from being able to assert something that just is, i.e. natural law, with the word science associated, to then go on to punt a just so story that also has science attached. So I can see the benefit, but that's based on the last three presentations as opposed to a speculation, because we know that happens. That's a fact. So I can only therefore surmise that the person that would benefit from having such a weird conflict in terms of the presentation when you say the word scientific in that context. So it's not science. QE quantum eraser is absolutely correct, but it does absolutely get used that way. Maybe it's in equal doses, because I hear the term natural law as much as I do scientific. So it's one where it depends who's using it, I suppose. And I can't pinpoint any exact examples where I can go, haha, there's pseudoscience Mr. X using the word science when he means natural.
And another thing that jumped off the page was Professor Tegmark when he said, when we look at reality through equations. Now, equations are not reality, right? Show me a bag of fives, right? You can't. Mathematics is a construct. It's conceptual.
Well, John, like, I have to say, I think for some people, mathematics is like reality, because, reality itself is just a bit too scary for them.
Well, I guess we need to define what reality is then, and natural, right? I'm just not getting it. If it's natural, then it has to have chemical formula or structure, charge, mass, momentum, or spin, millielectron volts, kcals, or kilojoules. All right, we got the number of 5. I want either of those criterion met, please. Not from you guys. I know this is abject buffoonery, is what it is. So it's not reality. Mass, not reality. Okay. Welcome to 3rd grade. I'm embarrassed even talking about it. I just don't.
But John, I think it's really hard for some people, especially people that use mathematics a lot. They just they just find it really hard to leave like those equations. I've spoken to like two of my friends and I've tried to talk with them, but as soon as we start to talk, they jump into those equations. They say, yes, but like look at this equation, like this equation shows this. So I say to them, no, let's just let's just say what we see. Let's just talk about real life. But they can't. They then start to write down like these equations again, and I can't get them to leave these equations. It's strange, but they just can't leave them.
Well, I got a good trick for you. Ask them if mathematics is science. That's the first That's the first step of the algo. Okay, and the majority of people are going to say yes. So your next query is germ theory science? And they're going to have to say yes, correct?
Yes.
The next question is an ICBM in their underwear. Give me the equation for germ theory.
Yes, yeah.
That was put to great effect by Betty Van Velsen, who's actually the owner of this Discord server. So big shout out. She's in the chat at the moment. Say hello to Betty. But she was up against GeoStreber, and precisely that happened. It was epic. Very amusing. But I believe GeoStreber went to the chat and asked one of his partners in crime for precisely that, and the person who was reasonably scientifically literate went, "No, you're not going to be getting the mathematics for that, my friend." That's scientifically valid. There's no mathematical equation in germ theory. Clue is in the title.
It was epic. Big thumbs up to Betty. She hammered him. A professed master's in chemistry against Betty Van Velsen. Very wise Betty Van Velsen. He felt the wrath. I loved every second of it, man.
But John, it's this strange thing, like I said to you, these people who I work with, like physicists, they just can't leave those equations. I've tried to speak to them numerous amounts of times, just real like subtle, but they can't. They go back to them every single time. It's really strange, but they do. They feel safe with these equations. They think these equations are real. Like that's what they think. It's strange, but it's true. I've tried multiple times, but no, they always go back to those equations thinking they are real.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have anything to do with science. I mean,
No,
ask them.
No.
Ask them if they know what science is first, right? They, in the first two sentences, cause and effect better come out of their mouth, right? Or they're clueless. Like I said, even if you ask them, what is a scientific hypothesis? And even to professional physicists, I would say 9 out of 10 couldn't answer that question correctly. I'll guarantee it. I already know it. I've been doing it for 12 years. So it is really scary out there, man.
And I think...
Sorry, bear with me a second, Dr. John. So shout out to Dave Rakier Gafford for the super chat. It says, every day should be about Jesus, not the world, while talking about world being glory to God. I hope I haven't butchered that. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, Dave Rakier Gafford. And also a shout out to MC Universe Sacred Truth Seeker. Thank Goodwill Hunting for the math psyops. Lol. Okie dokie. Thank you very much indeed to MC Universe Sacred Truth Seeker. Right, you are still in the middle of a presentation. It's had a bit of an interruption, but on with that theme, we've also been joined by the Adam Meakin. Good to have you. We might have to take him off server mute because he's not a mod here. So,
you got him?
No, I will have if that's what I've got to do.
Yeah, just take him off. Well, hold on. Keep him on mute for right now. Adam, get stuff.
You take him off mute in the server, though.
Let me check it. Adam Meakin. He's off mute. Adam, radio check. Lost 3. This is lost 1. Are you lost 2? Over. Yep.
He's had more than enough time. More than I cocked up in the intro. So let's move on with the presentation.
He's okay. Just hey, Adam, go ahead and drop and rejoin and try it again, brother.
Disconnect and rejoin. Right. If we all pop ourselves on mute, let's carry on with the presentation in your own time, Quantum Eraser.
Thank you, sir. Taking everything we discussed above and the past 3 presentations concerning science, the scientific method and the empirical nature of it, then why are people arguing ad nauseum, never ending, over whether the Earth is a sphere or a flat plane without quick resolution? Right? That should be everyone's first clue. Do people argue incessantly whether the lack of vitamin C causes scurvy or the lack of insulin with type 1 diabetes patients causes diabetic ketoacidosis? Do you hear these arguments? Are these debates? Are these secular public debates over whether it's true or it's not? No, they surely don't, because both are empirically validated by experiment. That's why they don't. It's either a 1 or a 0. It's either black or white. The hypothesis is either validated or it's not, right? You see the problem yet? Is the Earth a sphere or a flat plane a cause and effect question? One that's available for the scientific method and for scientific inquiry? Or is it a concrete noun question? Key point. Concrete nouns or what's and is's questions are outside the purview of the scientific method. Only why and how questions based on observations, the first step of the scientific method, can be adjudicated or reconciled, right? This is a scientific hypothesis. Lol C, strategic thinking and for scientific discovery, Cambridge. A scientific hypothesis is based on cause and effect reasoning. A scientific hypothesis does not merely state X and Y may be related, but explains why they are related. You have no viable X, so you have no Y. With the 2 questions above, whether it's a flat Earth or a spherical Earth. So for concrete nouns, like I just said, for example, is it a sphere, ball, or a flat plane? Your only recourse is to attempt to explain the cause of either, aka the how or the why. So basically, each and every single train wreck proof of a sphere, or flat for that matter, everyone bumbles, stumbles, and fumbles with is a non sequitur. That's why they're bumbling and fumbling and stumbling. On steroids, because number 1, you have no viable independent variable, and number 2, you have no coherent question. All are inane bollocks and boil down to, why is a bread box rectangular? True or false? Every single claim from the Baltard spinning space monkey religion is an affirmative consequent formal logical fallacy. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. The spinning space monkey part is here. We'll give you an example. If evolution is true, P, then insert any Darwinian grab bag post hoc observation, fossils, homology, similarity, genetic variation, and others, Q. We observe post hoc observation, Q. Therefore, evolution is true. Therefore, P. Or, if the spherical Earth with a radius of la is true, P, we will observe differing elevation angles to Polaris, Q. We observe differing elevation angles to Polaris, Q. Therefore, the spherical Earth is true. Therefore, P. I mean, The logical fallacy is that P doesn't necessarily follow from Q. For example, if I had just eaten a whole pizza, P, I would feel very full. Q. I feel very full. Q. Therefore, I have just eaten a whole pizza. Therefore, P. You got grade schoolers laughing at you over this nonsense, people. Couldn't I have eaten a 20-ounce ribeye with fries or the old 96er? Prove the spherical Earth first, window lickers. Comments, questions?
Eagle Plane and Anchor, shout out to him. He just recently did a little section that used Star Trek and the Philosophical Society with Spock explaining and affirming the consequent with if.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that was hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And another shout out, I will get to saying hello to Adam. I'll do that first, actually. Hello, Adam. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now? Is that any better?
Yeah, hopefully QE will level you
God.
up. And stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I can hear you, Adam.
Brilliant. Thank goodness for that. Evening, everyone.
Evening, sir. Glad to have you.
Evening,
Thanks
mate.
for coming.
Also, a shout out to Validation Boy, who probably is 3 years ago now, but he was the first person to say it prior to me even meeting Quantum Eraser. But he basically said the same thing, but in different words, which was to say every single proof or claim to be proof that the Earth is a sphere starts with the premise that the Earth is a sphere. So shout out to Validation Boy, who's the first person to clock it and verbalize it, to my reckoning, and say, yeah, every single globe Earth proof that's claimed to prove a globe will start with the statement, if the Earth's a globe, in effect, regardless of how they weasel it into with the affirming and the consequent. Quantum Eraser, Validation Boy, whoever else who's saying it, me included, we're all right. It's absolutely spot on. Every single claim that the globe exists will start with the premise that the Earth is a sphere, and then you'll go from there. So recognizing that is the way to undo every single claim of a globe Earth argument, because you won't find any exceptions. I used to say it's 99% of the arguments, thinking one day one will show up that's not an affirming the consequent. Nope, they're all affirming the consequent formal logical fallacies. You'll find it in there, I guarantee it, in every single claim of a globe. There is no exception.
Precisely.
Do you want to go first, Adam? Have you got any comments?
Yeah. A little late joining there. I mean, the only thing I'd say there is that's, and kudos to you, Nathan, really. It's the one thing I think you've brought to the forefront, and a little tool you've given a heck of a lot of people is to recognise these. Maybe not some of the more complex bullshitteries, but certainly the more obvious and standard ball proofs. It's, yeah, respectful. The constant drilling every day. I think there's a heck of a lot of people that are if P then Q.
John, anything to add at this stage?
No. It's just plain and simple, really, isn't it?
I have yet to hear an argument that doesn't follow affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Evolutionists do the same thing, so I was well trained. Right? It's real easy. What I would say to flat earthers, if I had to do it all over again, I would familiarize myself with logical fallacies. Now, there are literally thousands of them, right? But you're only going to run into, I would say 10 that are common and 5 for the majority. Right. So, you're not going to be an expert in all of them, but you'll be able to recognize once you study the big ones, straw man, affirming the consequent, begging the question, equivocation. Once you get a feel for, the logical bullshittery in those, then it comes quite easy. You might not be able to name the fallacy specifically, but something's inherently wrong with its internal reasoning. Over.
I've said this on the last few shows because I think these last 4 shows are probably the most important. If you were a newbie and you want to know where to start and you're going to start arguing this with people, these 4 presentations, that's where you need to start. But if you're lazy, the last 45 minutes, because it summarizes what is pseudoscience, what is science and how an argument will be formulated if you are a globehead. With those little details, you could pretty much battle your way through almost anything with the last 45 minutes of information, recognizing that all globe proofs are affirming the consequent. Now, I even boil that down to just the if P bit, because the if P in this regard is a begging the question fallacy. If I change that letter to if R, a lot of people watching will know precisely what I mean. They start with the if P, i.e. the affirming what consequent? Well, the globe. Well, their globe starts with R. So asking somebody for their proof of R is essentially saying, how are you going to prove anything when I know full well that every argument you use will start with basically if R. That's how they'll all start. If the Earth is a sphere. Well, that combined with a good understanding of where bullshittery rather than science is being asserted, and occasionally you'll find the word science weaseled in there, which is what's been covered in the first 20 minutes, you recognise all of these details and get them at least slightly familiar, you'll win most of your arguments if you're arguing for the obvious and observable nature of our reality. Yes, the Earth is indeed observably flat. However, you have got fundamentalist religious zealots with a whole toolbox of logical fallacy that they'll come at you with, and they'll claim science. Now, like I keep saying, if you're lazy, don't watch all 4. Just watch the last 45 minutes and get a good grip on what's been said. And like I say, you'll win most arguments that you have when you come across a globie that's affirming the consequent, which there will be. Have we covered everyone? Adam and Dr. John, I think you both had your little bit. Any more to add before we move back onto the presentation?
Yeah, I want to add
Yes,
something. Yeah, but go ahead, Dr. John.
yeah, I have to say, like during schooling, I don't think they teach how to reason and see like logical fallacies. I don't think that's taught.
No, logic's not taught.
No, and how to spot like logical fallacies isn't taught. So, because I think, should that be taught, young kids would see straight through things like very quickly.
Right, but you go to comprehensive, you're not getting taught the trivium.
No, for sure not.
Yeah, spot on. Kids should be taught logic. I completely agree. And not necessarily logical fallacy, just good logic. More for any more? Adam, maybe?
Yeah, I got something to add. It was
Ed?
last week or the week before. I'm pretty sure it was last week. It was precious when you sat there. It was you, Nathan, and you were talking, and you said, well, all you have to do is know the scientific method and natural law, and you'll win every argument. And then you sat there. It didn't hit you initially, right? But until you thought about it, and then all I heard was you laughing. I'm sitting there, no one said anything funny. And then you started laughing, right? Because you finally realized it. It's just that simple. Yep.
And I'll say what I realised. So what I appreciated was that 3 years ago, everyone's telling us that science proves we're on a spinning ball flying through a sky vacuum. And I'm telling the audience, if you're a flat earther, what you need to win here is a good understanding of science and a good understanding of natural law. And after I'd said it, I'm like, Jesus, I'm the flat earther telling people how to win. And how do you win? You know what actual science is and how natural law works. In other words,
Yeah,
a good
it was beautiful,
appreciation of how
man.
the world is actually functioning. And you're like, bloody hell, we've got it made. You are actually sitting pretty. There's not, I'm not a depressed fundy. And I don't know any other people in my surroundings, any other flat earthers who are depressed fundamentalists. Because what have you got to be depressed about? You've got science and natural law on your side. It's almost comical, isn't it?
Yes. I loved
kind
it.
of tried to make a similar point last night on Iron Realm, where they were talking about with Duma from South Africa about trying to get a database together, something that we all mused about many years ago. And I for me, working with you guys, the reality is actually, other than getting to people to recognize the fundamentals of the lies, the initial curvatures, etc., actually there isn't a database other than getting people to see science for what it is, what its limitations are, and actually seeing through the bullshittery and seeing the truth that it actually does speak, because that's the underpinning things for me that support my knowledge that it's not a ball. Do you know what I mean? It's not quotes here, there, and everywhere. It's actually the fact that you, most fundamentally, to support our statements that it's not a spinning space pair, we fall back to science, and it's our strongest weapon because it's what they're supposed to have on their side.
Exactly. I had mixed feelings. You say it's not quotes. So recently, I only saw it on Taboo Conspiracy's channel. Subscribe today to Taboo Conspiracy 2. He had the cosmologist, I hope that's the correct term, the Russian astronaut, who's being interviewed and out of the blue gets asked about the shape of the world. And he kind of hesitates for a second, gulps, and says, "Oh yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm obviously qualified in this arena. I wasn't expecting that question. The Earth's flat." Now, when I first heard it, I thought, this is interesting because 3 years ago, I'd have lent quite a lot of value to that. I'd be sharing it and putting this guy up on a pedestal. And don't get me wrong, I've seen people taking their photograph with him. He's at FEIC. So you're like, great, you know, he's a real person, and that's obviously his view, and he's, you know, got all the credentials. But without causing an offense to anybody who's done what I would have done 3 years ago, I just don't see that as having as much value as what Adam's just detailed. Having a good understanding of what natural law is, having a good understanding of what the scientific method does and what it isn't, i.e. all the reification fallacies applied to science as something that can speak, or something that has a little community, or something that goes through peer review. In other words, understanding what science isn't. Those are the things that are winning me my arguments, not being able to go to an authority, in this respect, a cosmonaut, because it just doesn't have the same impact as being grounded in what reality is, and that's what science does. You know, it's giving you a empirical result, something that's how did you describe it earlier? I'm just fishing for the words you used in the presentation, Quantum Eraser. Black or white, 1 or 0. It either is or it isn't. You've either confirmed your scientific prediction or you haven't. So it's very binary. You've got it once you've got scientific validity, or you haven't if you don't. Now, that's so powerful that people are going to want to hijack it. People who want their just so story to have the same gravitas as something that's empirically validated. So they hijack these things and they give us all the pseudo-scientists and the quasi this and the pseudo that, rather than the empirical method that's adhered to when you're establishing what happens in nature. The same is applicable to natural law. It's just describing what is. Now, the what is of our reality would tell you the sky's not a vacuum, because it's bloody obvious. But the natural law is something that you can go to if you understand it, and then detail it to your opponent when they claim with their fundy belief that the sky is a vacuum, preposterous though it may be to us with a good understanding in science, rather than an arsenal of cosmonaut quotes. So like I say, it was mixed feelings when I saw that, because I would have held it so in such high regard 3 years ago, and now it's like, not that I'm indifferent to it. It's like, great, you know, yeah, this is inevitable because it is flat, you know, and clearly the guy didn't want to lie. So, you know, good for him. He's got a clear conscience now.
I missed that. You're saying a cosmonaut? Cosmonaut where?
He's just on a TV interview, and it seemed, because I only saw a 20 to 25 second clip of it, that it wasn't what he was expecting to be asked. And the phraseology of the question was pretty clear. I'm asking you to just confirm the Earth's a ball for me, please, here, sir. And he goes, yeah, well, I'm qualified, but I wasn't expecting this question. Earth is actually flat. And then he reaffirms it. He says, yeah, take it from me. It's flat.
No way.
And then there's a translation and comments underneath from people who speak the same language saying, I speak the same language. This is an absolutely spot on translation. So yeah, and then, like I say, from what I can gather, he then turned up at the conference, and people have been having photos with him and confirmed that he is what he is, and he did say what he said. So, you know, that's, as I say, on that on Ben's channel, I believe, on Conspiracy 2. That was where I believe I saw it, along with a load of photos. I could be wrong in the channel. Forgive me if I've given you the wrong channel, but I'm pretty sure it was Ben that did that.
And that was recent. Is this guy
Correct.
young, old? What's
Old.
his? Go
I
ahead.
think it just happened yesterday. Something. Hello, by the way.
Hey, Chocolate, good to have you.
Evening chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate.
Good evening, boys. How's everybody? Yeah, this was just recent, John. This was like I just saw it yesterday for the first time. So
Just so my point doesn't get lost, that quote, because I'm going off the back of Adam saying, we could have a load of quotes in our arsenal, whereas we've actually got a good grounding in what science is, and that's going to win you your arguments rather than being able to shove in the face of some fundy globe head that you've got a cosmonaut that's saying it's flat. Well, yeah, it's obviously inobservably flat, but you've still got a fundy belief to defeat when they assign their belief to an affirming the consequent, or whatever was discussed, maybe 20 minutes ago now, because this has been a pretty long segue. But, in the first 45 minutes of the show, you've got the main tools of defeating fallacious reasoning with an understanding of natural law and science. That's what you have. That's what you need to win, not necessarily a whole bucket load of quotes, but given enough time and people with a decent enough conscience, with their conscience wanting to be clear, they'll just declare it like it is. Not everyone wants to lie about the nature of reality.
hey, can I back you up on that for a second? I think that was spot on, really, with the, even though this guy came out and said that like a couple years ago, I would have done the same thing. I would have been all over it. I would have shared it. Like, oh my God, cosmonauts, the astronaut says it's flat. Oh my God. But when I saw it yesterday, I was like, yeah, I know. It was kind of just that, like, yeah, I know it's flat. It's not as exciting as it would have been like 2 years ago because I already know. It's not like it's brand new to me, Like I know there are other people out there. I'm sure it's all great, and it is actually kind of cool, and it's just another nail in the coffin for that spinning ball. But yeah, natural law and actual science, yeah, it's pretty good to have that in the utility belt. So
Right, chocolate. It's brilliant. It's fun. I've not heard about it, and obviously it's great to hear. But in terms of it's not worth anything, as we've been pointing out, the words of men aren't really worth a great deal, irrespective of whether it's in your favor or not. In terms of validity for supporting any perspective, it's not really worth it. Otherwise, no disgrace would be.
I have a question for you, Adam. Since you came in just a little bit late, let me ask you this question: do you look at reality through equations?
Equations are a crude attempt and a recognized limited attempt to describe reality.
Right.
But they're not in any way reality, but they're a very crude man-made attempt to try and describe it in mathematical terms.
That's not what he asked. Do you?
Right, no, I mean, I suppose, no, an equation, like, you can use an equation, can't you? If you're thinking about a reaction, like an exothermic or endothermic reaction, you can use an equation to calculate that enthalpy change, can't you? But does that mean that's described reality? No, you've described and a very small part of it. The trouble with all equations is they're very limited in that they never ever encompass reality. They only ever try to describe a small part of any reality.
Exactly, you got it. They're context based. Have you ever heard Richard Hamming talk about mathematics? He's the inventor of computer science, by the way. Hamming block codes. Yeah, he should. I should pull those out. I have them deep in my files somewhere. I'll go search them out. Probably bring them up on the show sometime this week. It's very interesting, his take. He also has a take on Einstein. That's precious. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and deal with that.
I'm unfamiliar. I would like to. So, based on what he does, I would say yes. I would just play devil's advocate and say, yeah, of course, this guy's going to be talking about mathematics at length, right?
Richard Hamming?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna have some strong opinions on it, wouldn't you think?
I'll just have to tuck my ignorance away till next time. I'm always keen to hear these new things, and we're in the middle of a live show.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Go on.
Yeah, it's okay because we only have one small section left to go, an important section, but one very small section left to go, so we're not in any big hurry.
Is there any more to add on this little, well, I say little, this massive tangent we've gone off because we want to round out the Master of Science presentation with some sort of consistency. Any more for any more? If not, we'll move on with the presentation.
No one's going to say anything after that.
Yeah, that was the intention.
I know. It was priceless. Good. Yep. All right, we ready to rock?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What we got here in Shangri-La, folks, is a screaming testimony documented over and over again of what happens as a result of what I phrase as the game. We have pseudoscience religions, astronomy, astrophysics, and cosmology, paleontology, geology, anthropology, archaeology, evolutionary biology. Yeah, I'm still laughing. And what is that? Theoretical physics. Crocheting is more scientific than all these clowns combined. Why? Well, neither of the masqueraders can follow the scientific method. Science, duh, it's a hard stop. Listen up. Because the pseudoscience priests from the religions above know that the Joe Globy and the spinning Sally Masses, aka ball-tard spinning space monkeys, wouldn't know what actual science or basic reasoning was if it landed on their heads, spun around, and whistled Dixie, they then can pretty much pontificate anything under the term science via clumsy equivocation fallacy and second-grade linguistic word game gymnastics, and have their brain-dead religious hordes from their congregations mindlessly parrot any and all manner of blatant pseudoscience religious propaganda, that is, fairy tales, that they hear directly from them or the metric tons of sermons posted on their church's website, Wiki Google, and or thousands of affiliate websites. However, when the pseudoscience priest or anyone from their congregation is directly challenged by anyone with a 5th grade general science acumen or better, and or can fog a mirror, they then call the challenger names, pick an appeal to a ridicule fallacy, akin to the tactics employed on a 2nd grade playground, carpet bomb a barrage of logical fallacies, contradict themselves with every other breath, and muster their hordes and appeal to the consensus fallacy of their pseudoscience congregationers and priests. Then rinse, repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's all they do. It's simply pseudoscience religion, parroted incessantly by fanatical indoctrinated wankers, that's your spinning space monkey ball-tards, that couldn't tell the difference between a Bunsen burner and a beach ball. Then they rail against religion with voracious anger, all the while being neck deep in one. Scientifically falsified religion, by the way. Your materialism, funding materialism. It's mind-numbing bullshittery, people. Thanks, Globe-tard goobers, for perfectly illustrating. The end. Questions, comments?
Excellent. So yeah, check out the last 3 of these 4 presentations if you haven't done so already. I'm sure you've got a playlist on your channel, correct, Quantum Eraser?
I do. It's Science Education playlist, and it's going to be populated by many, many videos, including these 4. And like I said, over the next 3 or 4 months, it's going to start to pile up. Thanks.
Well, we have got at least a couple of guests, I believe, so we'll get some opinions from the public. But before we do, anybody in the Ballbusters team that wants to add anything to the end of that presentation before we go on to the public's opinion?
Nothing too significant other than really that's clearly not there, and that is the message that needs to be spread. And that's it. I don't think we're doing a bad job. I've just got back off a load of in Europe, and actually when you do engage with people and start to point out all of these things, but actually most people do twig, actually, shit, that's a contradiction. And I don't think it's necessarily, I think it's a matter of waking people up to the contradictions. And John, I think I've given you kudos in the past with regards to, your direct approach. So that was what was needed with me, a direct approach to challenge things that you would have ordinarily defended. And the knowledge is there in most people. It's just that it's been hoodwinked. And until you see it, it's not necessarily that obvious. You listen to your if, P's and Q's, and you tend to just loll along with it because you do believe it's been validated. For me, is the challenge.
But you see what they've done. Over the past 500 years, it's gone on longer. They used their position as respected, quote unquote, scientists, right? To peddle their fairy tales, right? They've been lying. They're deceitful liars, right? At a fundamental level. That's what pisses me off.
Just for ease for the rest of the panel and hopefully any guests that join, if you're going to address Dr. John D, then Dr. John or Dr. John D, and if you're going to talk to Quantum Eraser or QE, just so we don't get confused. Chocolate saying, anything to add?
No. I'll stand and say that it's kind of pathetic that they have used this quote unquote scientist term to dupe people into just believing that they're the ones that hold all the keys and have all the cards, and that nobody else can actually do science. And I mean, I had to tell somebody today at my job. He's like, all the scientists, they're the ones doing all this stuff. I was like, look, if you're just following scientific method, you're being a scientist. It's really not that hard. Sure, they might be more experienced scientists, but if you're following scientific method, that's what they do. That's what they should be doing, right? So that's something anybody could do. You don't have to look at the priest with the white lab coats and the little NASA insignia on their shirt to feel like you're speaking to a scientist. Ask them for the proof that backs up their claims. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, yep.
Beyond your description of establishing cause and effect based on a scientific prediction after observing phenomena, and then systematically validating it through experimentation, the person that does that is a scientist. But beyond that, it's another reification fallacy, because science isn't a little man, it's a method. Now, you can call a man who employs that method a scientist, but that's so narrow, but it's so powerful. So, of course, that term gets expanded out into pseudoscientists' arenas so that they can call themselves scientists when they're not. Bottom line. Right. Dr. John, anything you'd like to add to the end of this presentation? And then we'll go into the open chat bit.
Yeah. And yes, I think it's been a matter of trust trust, in the past, people have just like trusted these people wearing, these people like wearing like white, these like white lab coats. But now I think people are beginning to doubt slightly, and hopefully that, like that will be good, because they will start to think like for themselves, or even just first like doubt what they've been told first of all, because I think, like that's what's been like manipulated. Is that people's trust.
Absolutely. I see people all the time at the moment on various YouTube platforms talking about climate change, and their appeals are always to scientists and statistics. And you just think, if you only appreciated what you're appealing to, you'd realize the nonsense that's being asserted. Ask for scientific validity, ask for experimental data. Don't ask for statistics and the consensus of men. Has this been through peer review? Who cares? So let's start asking a few members of the panel that have joined us that aren't Ballbusters. So I'm going to butcher this name. El Brocchia, how you doing? Can you hear us? To the other panel members, while we're trying to get a few words out of the public, this is going to be a period where there may be some protracted silences, but don't worry, we will get through it.
I'll help you out with that name, Mr. I take Spanish. It's El Boricua.
Mr. I take Spanish.
El Boricua.
Spanish songs. Oh, anyway, let's not get sidetracked. Can you give him a few seconds, or her? Can you hear us? Fair enough. We also have Travis. How you doing, Travis? Can you hear us? Mute, my friend. I can see you flashing.
My mic's open.
There we go. For some reason, I can't.
Mic is open. Radio check over.
Hey, the Spanish guy. Hold on one second, Travis. Spanish El Bacora, whatever it was. He was on server mute also.
Hey, how you doing, John and Dr. John?
What's up?
Yeah, I was muted. Zilbaric. What's up, Chocolate?
Very good to have you. Did you have a question or a comment?
Oh no, I actually, grew up in church, and I had a bunch of pastors that are my grandparents are pastors, my dad, my uncles, and they appeal to that the what their scientists has said and the science, and they forget what's in scripture, and they don't look at it as how when you read scriptures now, and I know it's a flat earth, and it's just I just don't know how they just got duped. It's because they throw science in there, and
I know how they got duped, because when they appealed to the scientists, were they actual scientists?
Yeah, true that.
Of course not. They weren't scientists. They were used only in name. They are the sole reason why we're in the state that we're in, right? They've used their position, pseudoscientists masquerading as respected scientists, to knowingly deceive millions, your kids, and most likely their kids, right? This is the whole kit and caboodle, the big kahuna, right? It's all boils down to, right? Pseudoscientists pretending that they're scientists and using their position to deceive millions. End of story.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, these guys, they're scientists in name, and I'm going to use NASA's favorite word. These guys are only the term scientist and the way they use it is nominal. The name only.
But you know what's funny though, Quantum, is that the Bible even talks about that. I don't remember the verse correctly, but it says something about be aware of those that called I can't remember the exact
Science
words, but
falsely so called.
yes, that one.
I think it's in Timothy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
There's a little aside from that. Thank you very much, by the way. To say that there are certain people on our side of the argument, much to the frustration of Quantum Eraser, who would condemn science in those words. They'd say words to the effect of science has deceived us. And that's a lack of recognition of the difference between an assertion of science by a pseudo-scientist and an adherence to the scientific method. And there's a big distinction between the two. Science has not deceived anybody. People have hijacked that term to lend credence to pseudoscience assertions. And it's the recognition that pseudoscience has lied to you that is part of this presentation, an understanding of what science actually is and what it does. And if you have a firm grip on that, you can call out somebody who says, well, science has proclaimed that, blah, 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 just so story. And then you can start asking them for an actual adherence to science. Oh, really? Well, Mr. I've just given you a just so story. What was the actual observed phenomena? What was the adherence to this method? What was the scientific prediction, otherwise known as a hypothesis? What was the independent and dependent variables, otherwise known as the cause and effect? If they don't have these things, then they don't have science. If they do have those things, you want to see if their scientific prediction, hypothesis, guess, has been validated by systematic experimentation, giving you some empiricism to your prediction. So if you understand these arguing tools, shall we call them, but really just an understanding of what natural law and science is, you'll be able to, as we've said throughout the show, defeat these arguments. Now, there are a couple of other guests. So, Travis, you were here first. Hopefully, if you can pop him off.
Yes, my radio check. Radio
Anything to
check.
add? Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think you guys started an hour earlier than you normally do, but so I can't give you a comment on topic. However, I will say that the scientists that I used to listen to are the Christian scientists, creation scientists. I mean, and I'm a Christian myself, but you know, everything they speak of is historical science, right? And they call it science, and it's pseudoscience, right? Because it's not experimental, not verifiable, not empirical, just guesswork from a worldview. So
that is on topic. That's spot on. You're a regular, Travis, so you are actually absolutely on point and on topic.
Splendid.
What's
also joined?
Go ahead.
Go on, Quantum Eraser.
What's a creation? What's a creationist scientist?
That might come.
Are you asking me, sir?
I'm asking anyone on the panel. What's a creationist scientist? I want to know what that is.
A kind of a contradiction in terms, in the same way I said to Chocolate earlier, that if you're not somebody who's applying the methodology of science, the scientific method, then you aren't a scientist. So a creationist scientist sounds like one of those reification fallacies I described that falls outside the realms of somebody who is adhering to the scientific method to establish the cause and effect. Would I be correct?
Well, it's based on natural law, right? Everyone's a creationist, right? Whether they like it or not, because it's based on not only quantum mechanics. We don't even have to go there. We can just base it off the first and second laws of thermodynamics. There must have been a beginning. A beginning is creation, right? Don't need any science for that. Just ground squirrel level reasoning based on the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Thanks.
Why would anybody? We'll get to the rig. I haven't missed you there, sir. Why would you need to attribute the word science to it then? Who's been doing that unnecessarily?
That's what they do.
Go ahead.
That's to you, sorry.
I was just saying that's what they do. It's pseudoscience. So they think if you're analyzing something, then you're doing science. I mean, essentially, that is what it is. Like, you know, observed phenomenon. They don't care about that. It's all just trying to affirm, you know, creation from their position, with evidence that they could clean together in a way, circular reason, the inferences, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether quantum race is going to want to address that or not, but unless you fall foul of the fallacy and assert that this is circular reasoning, therefore can't have creation, is that what you're trying? Well, I'm putting words in QE's mouth. Do you want to comment on that, QE?
I don't know what to say. I thought I already said it. Creation. Everyone is a create. Let me say it again. Every single person, even knowingly or unknowingly, is a creationist based on the laws of thermodynamics. That is the first and second laws of thermodynamics. It's just that simple. Now, the next question is, you have to boil it down to, well, what created us or the universe, right? There's only two choices. Either nature did it or an intelligent agent did it. Those are the only two ontological primitives. It's it. So when they call Christians or anyone else presuppositionalist, well, so are you. Because
John,
Go ahead.
that nature business bugs me. Nature did it. It's always one that nature isn't anything other than a description of how things happen. It's not an entity that directs things in of itself. I don't like that phrase. Do you get my point? It implies something that materialism, as if
yeah. Yeah, that's the only two ontological primitives, materialism and idealism. That's it. Your choice.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the so-called creation scientists are bogged down, wallowing in the mire, trying to fight these evolutionists over their, thoughts and ridiculous grandeur conjectures. You know what I mean?
Yes. So there isn't really creationist scientists, or it's Mox Nix. You're either a scientist or you're not. You're either employing the scientific method or you're not. It's just that simple.
Yes.
Just sorry, Travis. Thank you for that. Any chance you can take the rig off server mute so he can hopefully join this conversation, express his views and all that good stuff?
Yes, he's off.
You have to take yourself off mute locally as well, the rig. Can you hear us? Lost one. What is it?
It's lost 3. This is lost 1. Are you lost 2 over?
At the start of the show, out of pure muscle memory, I muted the line that you came through on because that's what I do at the beginning of my show. And then I could hear you say, "We're live." I'm like, why can't I hear him?
It was priceless, man. Thanks. Paula, help!
Got Harold Bishop from Ramsey Street.
He is off server mute. Go ahead, sir.
Here's Harold. Give him a few seconds and then we'll just hopefully round out this live show with a bit of chit chat if we don't hear from Harold Bishop.
You got one more also.
What else we got?
Trance.
Trant.
Oh, he just left.
That's it. So, yeah, feel free to chip into the conversation as you will if you want to take everyone off mute and then pop them back on just before we do the round out to this live show. But in general, about science, because it's cool, right? Feel free to pop yourselves off mute, all of the Ballbusters panel. Or not. I can sit here and talk to myself indefinitely about how cool science is.
Nah,
So I think the
science is
first
pretty
definition
cool.
of pseudoscience was science so-called. Quantum.
Anything that doesn't adhere to the scientific method would be pseudoscience if it's asserted to be science. Earlier on in the live presentation, Dr. John was saying about the mixing up of all these different sciences in terms of the way we were taught it, like unscrambling scrambled eggs coming to a channel like Quantum Eraser, because essentially you've been given all this information in a fairly weird order so that you can be lied to by a pseudoscientist. That's really what it boils down to. I don't want to put any icing on it. That's how it is. And yeah, you've got to kind of go through this process of unscrambling the scrambled eggs of your education. And various bits of the presentation are going to point out where they were right, and various bits are going to point out where they lied to you. It's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yes, it's that thing as well. When the children go to school, they do science. They do science. So even if they're sat in a classroom, just learning about photosynthesis, from a book, they think that's science. They are doing science. So it's kind of just making people think, no, science is this very certain thing. Just because you're sat down reading a book, you're not doing science. And I think that is a big part of the problem, that people just think that this is science. It's all just science.
Yeah, unless you're reading about how they discovered such things, not science. Right? It might be scientific knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be part of it when you're doing your research, right? But that's not actual science.
No. And again, if you speak to a 12-year-old child and saying, "What are you doing in science?" You say that, as a parent, what are you doing in music? What are you doing in science? So then whatever they're doing is considered in their mind as science, because that's the way we speak about it. Yeah, if you see what I mean. Just generally, it's all, mixed up.
Yeah, my
Yeah, we
son,
call it
a
applied
good
science.
example of that. Sorry about that. A good example of that. For the past 2 weeks, my son is studying the periodic table, right? So there's a lot of memorize and regurgitate. He's got to memorize the periodic table. Good luck with that. Is that science?
No, obviously not.
No, that's memorized.
But
Yes,
yeah,
no.
but
John,
Well,
teach him this one, mate.
It's-
Healy bebkan off in Namgal Sips Claw. That's how
Yeah.
you memorise the periodic table.
What? Say that
Hold on.
again.
Hold on. Before we segue, thank you, Adam. We will get to your mnemonics.
No, you
later.
don't need to.
So,
And I was
the periodic table is derived from quantum mechanics. So if the lesson that was being taught was about how we had those derived, then you could argue that part of the lesson was about an application of the scientific method. Strictly speaking, because of your phraseology, and I'm sure it's deliberate, no. Learning about the periodic table is absolutely not science.
Exactly. It's all context based, right? It depends on the question that you're asking, right? Remember that 2-step algo. Is this a scientific?
What is?
Go ahead.
Oh, I just said, is it a why or a what is question? Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah. Is it a how, why, or a what is question? Exactly. Yes.
yeah, I
What
could
is
attest
the
to-
atomic weight, or any derivative of a question that might come from a memorization of the periodic table wouldn't be an application of a cause and effect relationship being established through a method based on hypothesis. That's science.
Precisely.
I could attest to that because my son was in middle school and he came home with a paper saying they're gonna have a science fair, and in the science fair in the paper it says that they're gonna use the scientific method. So when I look at the back of the paper, the first thing in the scientific method that they're explaining is ask a question. I was like,
Oh man.
yeah.
Yep. That's science, buddies.
Yeah, have a thought, right?
Have a
First
thought.
sentence.
Yeah.
Have a thought.
And then it says one of the things that says is ask a question either to solve a problem, or I forgot what was it was completely not the scientific method, and that was supposed to be a paper that came from the head of the science in the district. So
That's a problem, isn't it?
huge.
The problem with education. So, in the same way as if there was an overt religion being taught, oh, my bad, there is heliocentrism. Well, you're going to need weasel room. So, part of your education's got to be leaving that brainwashing open for you to accept the words of a pseudoscience later on in life.
Like I said before, even the actual sciences, where you have quantum mechanics, you have genetics, chemistry, biochemistry, and biology. Each of those disciplines, no matter what, if any claims come out from them, then it has to be validated by experiment. They don't get a free pass just with their name. Yes, they are the true scientists. There's no doubt about it, right? But they can abuse their position also. So to solve that problem, anyone coming out and saying, yeah, okay, I'm a physicist, quantum mechanics, I'm a geneticist, here's my claim. Okay, what's your claim? What was the hypothesis? What was your observed phenomena? Yeah, let's just start. Number one, what was your observed phenomena? Then give me the hypothesis, and then give me the experiment. Now, you don't have to do the experiment. If you got the experiment cited, that's fine. Show me where it is so I can go ahead and review it. So I just want everyone to recognize the diligence here and the scrutiny. Thanks.
Now, a word of warning. If you vaguely understand some of the concepts that have been described in the last 4 presentations, and you go out gung-ho, you'll find yourself wielding a chainsaw that you don't understand how to operate. Now, I've seen this many times. I'm not going to name and shame anybody in this particular example, but people who would go out, hear any assertion, doesn't matter what for the example, and ask similar questions to Quantum Eraser. In other words, what was your hypothesis? And the person hasn't actually asserted any sort of causal relationship or claimed that what they are asserting has any scientific validity. But yet they're being asked for their independent variable straight off the bat because they see how well it gets wielded by somebody who understands how to use the chainsaw. They don't necessarily think, right, I understand now. You've got to ask people for scientific validity. Well, yeah, you have, but sometimes the assertion might not necessarily require it. It might just be a fact that you could just accept rather than challenging based on their lack of independent variable, which in many instances is quite nonsensical.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thanks.
So yeah, just if you don't want to be embarrassed, which you will be if you've got only a vague idea what you're doing, then just don't do it. That's my advice.
Yeah. You're wielding a chainsaw, but you don't give a 3-month-old a chainsaw. Right? They got to know what they're doing with that chainsaw. Or they're going to cut their arms off. Thanks.
As the lumberjack slide is on screen. Perfect timing.
Yep. Pretend clown lumberjacks, boy. Watch out for them.
The lumberjack analogy is different, though. So the lumberjack analogy is more applicable to the ball-tards, because they're the ones we've talked about throughout these presentations when we're talking about the pseudoscientists. So essentially, they're the people coming along saying, yeah, I'm a scientist. Yeah, I've got scientific validity. They're the pretender clown lumberjacks. You know, there's people, obviously analogous in John's example. The scientists are the real lumberjacks, the guys who have sweated and learned their craft and are doing it, actually doing it, chopping down the trees, or in this analogy, performing science. But the glow-tards are the pretender clowns. They don't do it around us anymore, I can tell you that much. But they do it all over the place, just not in our earshot, or so they hope. You know, they'll assert that they've got scientific validity for an assertion of a sphere Earth in a vacuum. And they don't. Those are the pretender clowns. Those are the people pretending to be lumberjacks. They're pretending to be science. And it just bugs me a little bit. I know this, I didn't get it when you first started saying it, how frustrating it was when you heard people throwing science under the bus. It's like, first you're guilty of reifying science into something that it isn't. It's just a method. It's not guilty of anything. It's not going to be put on trial. It's a method. And the method is empirical. So if you've got science, then you've got an empirical assertion based on causal reasoning. Well, that's all science is. So you can't hold it to task for anything other than doing what it's intended to do, well, establishing cause and effect. However, beyond those boundaries, the assertions that come from men, yeah, you can hold those pseudoscience pretender clown lumberjacks to account by asking them questions based on an understanding of what science actually is. Cause and effect reasoning based on an observed phenomena, something occurring in the physical and natural world that needs the explanation of a cause. And to establish that, you formulate a hypothesis with a prediction of what you think causes it, your independent variable, and you have a null hypothesis, something that will give you the empirical. Oh, got a lot of Discord rumblings. So yeah, understanding what science is and what science isn't is what will win you your arguments here. Understanding what natural law is what will weed out the pretender clowns. And you've been brainwashed from school, there's no two ways about it, into a mild acceptance of pseudoscience claims. And we're unscrambling those scrambled eggs. Well, mostly kudos to Quantum Eraser for all these 4 presentations. They were all excellent. I couldn't recommend them highly enough. So check out his playlist of all 4 of these because they've been great. But I said it on this show, the first 45 minutes of this particular presentation, part 4, is an excellent summary to know what you're in for and how you'll win and what you'll be understanding and regurgitating with a good understanding to win, should you want to win arguments about the nature of reality. So yeah, there you go. That's my words of warning and my summary of this particular concluding part 4 of 4 in the Master of Sciences presentation. So yes, big kudos to you, QE. Excellent presentations.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's been a treat. It's been a treat to listen to, be a part of. Thank you. Also, about that lumberjack real quick, too. It looks like that pretender clown in the background of that lumberjack picture was wielding a broom. Is that what that was?
Yeah. And of all those outstanding thumbnails, all credit goes to the beautiful Betty Van Velsen, who made every single last one of them. Thanks, Betty.
Betty also runs the server that we are graciously getting the use of here for Ballbusters. So again, another massive shout out to Betty Van Velsen. Unless there's any closing remarks from any of the Ballbusters, I'm going to do a thank you to all of it, and then hopefully QE will round out the show. So any last remarks from any of the Ballbusters team? Let's maybe start with Dr. John.
Well, yep, you got to hand it to the scientific method, yeah, haven't you? It just has to be black and white, that's what we need as that's what we need as human beings to make sense of reality. Has to be black and white, straight down the line. That's why we love science.
Let's hear it for science, and thank you for joining us for the first time. It's been a pleasure having you, Dr. John.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
But saying anything to add? Closing remarks?
Not too much, except to say that I love the presentations.
Maybe drop and rejoin, and I'll come back to you at the end, Chocolate, because we can't hear what you're saying.
Yep.
So, do we have Adam? Let's hope so.
Yay, science! I'll say that genuinely. I said it at the beginning about the thing. It is our best weapon. We just have to understand it, and most fundamentally, at the early stages, differentiate what is the science, what isn't the science, and that's a painful process. Slaps your ego a bit. I think John D would probably agree with that. But actually, it's the reality that gives clarity. So, yay, science.
About you, Quantum Eraser, before I do an outro and hopefully get you queued up with all those buttons. Have you got any final remarks? Kudos again, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love doing the science presentations. I'm not gonna stop doing the science presentations. This isn't the last one. I think it's really simple. Science has always been really easy, right? The scientific method, that's all it is. based on cause and effect reasoning. It's hypothesis based, independent, dependent variables, and then you experiment to validate that hypothesis or invalidate it. It's just that simple. Really easy, and it's been frauded and overcome by pseudoscientists and wielded by frauds to deceive millions. And I'm trying to put a barrier and reverse that trend. But I'll tell you what, it's like treading through molasses, man. I mean, I've been doing it for 3.5 years. I'll turn on a video. I'll turn one on today that'll reify science, and the person there with good intentions will have no clue of what the scientific method is or what science is. It's pretty frustrating. I have to get my therapy on time, but I'm going to be back doing it tomorrow. So as long as the Lord lets me, I'm going to continue to do it. So that's my final thoughts. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, while you get your buttons queued up to play the outro, hopefully without any issue, we'll get a few words from Chocolate saying he's rejoined us. Hopefully he's got a working mic and he can give us his last closing thoughts. You there, Chocolate?
Radio check.
No.
Yeah, radio
Good.
check confirmed. I can hear him.
Hey, Chocolate.
Yeah. I'll just say, John, awesome presentations, man, and I understand frustration because when I see the videos, all the crap out there that people just are running around believing, it bothers me too. So I like being on the on the front lines of the people trying to take this out, this nonsense where we have astrophysicists saying, "Oh, scientific method." Nobody in my field follows scientific method. It's the seat of our pants. It's guesswork, leaps of logic. Really? That's what people are running around believing. And here's one of those guys, one of the priests telling you that blatantly in your face. So yeah, y'all can have that. I'll stick with the real science, not the leaps of logic. So yeah, good stuff, good show. Thanks.
This came up on the debate. It's over. They're telling you it's pseudo. These words, these references that QE's presented on these full presentations are their words. They're telling you it's not real. So am I all good to do an outro, Quantum Eraser? Ready to rock?
Whenever you're ready, I got the buttons ready.
I'll say first, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who tuned in live on the Quantum Eraser channel for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. Be sure to smash that Patreon link and PayPal link in the info box below this video. Also, of course, a massive thank you first and foremost to Quantum Eraser himself for hosting this show and putting together the Master of Science presentation. Again, a massive thank you to Chocolate Sane, Dr. John D, and Adam Meakin for making this Ballbusters panel possible. I've been your Master of Ceremonies, Nathan Oakley. Massive thanks again to Quantum Eraser, and we'll see you all in the next Ballbusters.
Thank you.